Our gospel reading for this morning comes from the 12th chapter of Mark. Jesus' days are numbered. He is in Jerusalem in the final week of his life. He's teaching today in the temple. Listen for what the Spirit would speak to us through these words. As Jesus taught, he said, "Beware the scribes." And scribes were, that sounds like stenographers. The scribes were religious experts. The scribes who like to walk around in long robes and be greeted with respect in the marketplace, and to have the best seats in the synagogues and places of honor at banquets. They devour widows' houses, and for the sake of appearances say long prayers. They will receive the greater condemnation. He sat down opposite the treasury and watched the crowd putting money in the treasury. Many rich people put in large sums. A poor widow came and put in 2 small copper coins, which are worth a penny. Then he called his disciples and said to them, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put in more than all those who are contributing to the treasury. For all of them have contributed out of their abundance, but she, out of her poverty, has put in everything she had, all she had to live on." The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. I have been to 3 high school reunions. It makes me feel terribly old to say so, but I attended my 35th reunion a couple of years ago. And this one was a little different from the 10th and the 20th. My classmates and I are a lot closer now to the end of careers than we are to the beginning. Quite a few have died. Some have or are about to retire. At a 10th reunion, so much lay in the future. You could not make anything more than provisional judgments about how your life had gone. But at a 35th, when you gather for a 35th reunion, it's difficult to look at people and not make some judgments. Now, some of them are pretty superficial. If you've been to such reunions, you know what I'm talking about. Some people age better than others. Some people look a lot like they did in their senior class picture. Others you just look at and go, "Who in the world is that?" Other sorts of judgment require more information, a little bit of catching up. Graduate degrees, what they've done, where they've worked, where they live now, where their kids go to college, and other such things help you begin to rate people in some sort of success scale. One is an Air Force general. Number are lawyers, some own businesses, some are firefighters, some are teachers, and so on. Of course, not everyone uses the same measure of success. Some are impressed by an Air Force general, some are not. Some are impressed by a teacher, some are not. Some are impressed by, not many, some are impressed by a pastor, some are not. But whether or not you've ever been to a high school reunion, you probably use some sort of measures of success, some kind of scales to make judgments, to think about life choices. Parents want their children to do well, so they worry about the school district they live in. And children learn at a very early age that they will be measured. Think of all the scales that we use. Grades, SAT or ACT scores. State college versus Ivy League versus community college. And it doesn't stop when you get out of school. salary, job, the car you drive, where you live, where you vacation, who you know, how important you are, and so on. Numbers tend to figure prominently in a lot of success scales and a lot of measures. And such measures find their way into the church. Successful pastors are those in churches with lots of people. And successful churches are those with lots of membership and large budgets. We just completed a stewardship campaign here that focused on giving as a spiritual discipline and on the tithe as a measure of spiritual health and vitality. But still, we'll calculate the success of the campaign based in total dollars. Now, there's a practical necessity to this, I suppose. But it sure seems out of sync with the words Jesus speaks to us today. Jesus sees a widow who place a couple of pennies in the treasury, and he says, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put in more than all those who are contributing to the treasury." Surely Jesus knows that her couple of coins won't pay enough for a laborer to sweep the entrance of the temple. Her gift is insignificant. It is no more useful than if someone puts 2 pennies in our offering plate today. It will accomplish no more. And yet Jesus calls it more. Jesus must be using some different sort of success scale, some different measure, some different sort of math. Our gospel reading for today has 2 very distinct sections. In the first section, Jesus denounces the scribes, those religious experts, for their hypocrisy, for focusing on how they look on those success scales. And in the second section, Jesus sees that woman who puts in 2 coins that Jesus calls more. But there are widows in the first section as well. Jesus says the scribes devour widows' houses. Who knows, maybe the woman, the widow Jesus sees at the treasury, maybe she also is destitute because she has given too much to the religious institution of which the scribes are a part. Today's gospel is a favorite stewardship text for obvious reasons. But sermons on its supposed lesson of sacrificial giving almost always ignore the context of widows who lose their houses, lose them with help from their church. Perhaps we might hear this gospel reading a little differently if we let go of some of our success measures, if we used a different sort of math. Our success scales, our measures and math, tell us that no matter how much we have, it isn't enough. Even though Jesus says the widow's 2 coins are more. Our endless appetite for more requires the U.S. to consume a lion's share of the world's resources and to control much of the world's wealth. Even though Jesus says a poor widow has more. Strange that unlike the widow, we struggle to be truly generous, while at the very same time, our insatiable appetite for more create sweatshops that oppress children and widows? Does it ever seem to you like we are captive to our measures of success, to our kind of math? And that it might be a wonderful breath of freedom to be released from them, to cast off the demands and the requirements that govern our lives, and to be free to love and accept whoever we meet without worrying about who they are or whether or not they're important enough to be worth our time. To be able to live without worrying about whether or not we have enough or whether or not we measure up. To become like very small children who can easily accept and embrace both themselves and others. In the first centuries of the Christian faith, there were a lot of adult converts who became followers of Jesus. And so, quite naturally, there were lots of adult baptisms, typically by immersion. And very often in these baptisms, the person coming for baptism would strip off his or her old clothes and throw them away prior to entering the waters. They would come out of the waters naked, reborn, and they would be given a bright white robe to put on. And this robe not only signified the purity and the righteousness of Christ, but it was reminiscent of the togas that were given to people who became Roman citizens. The newly baptized wore these robes that marked them as new citizens of something wonderful, a new day with a coming dominion of God, God's new and different day that accompanied by a new and different math, by new and different measures. In our baptisms, we become citizens of God's new dominion, that new day that is coming. But unlike those first Jesus followers who threw away their clothes, very often we've saved ours. Very often we continue to live by the measures and math of this world. We, in the process, not only fail to witness to the new and wonderful life that is possible in Christ, but we also cling to the very ways that trap us in endless busyness and striving, that leave many of us overstressed and overextended, not to mention our children. What sort of math and measures govern your life? Do those measures leave you fulfilled and secure and at peace? Or do they leave you anxious and harried and worried? Are you wearing the old clothes of an old world that is passing away? Or are you wearing the bright new robes of God's new day, the bright new clothes of someone made new in the waters of baptism? All praise and glory to the God whose love comes to us in Jesus. seeking to make us new. Thanks be to God.